Hey, Glenn with one N here, and in this video I'm going to show you how I set up my live performance rig. I've got a little one-man show called Junk, kind of like a weird electro-comedy thing. There's synchronized videos, there's lights, use video game controllers, and a few other little odds and ends. So maybe this will give you some ideas you can use in your live performance. You can skip to the different sections that you're interested in. I'll have all the timestamps in the description, and also links to all of the hardware and software that I mentioned. So first things first, I normally put all of my stuff on an ironing board for live performance shows. A regular, X keyboard stand doesn't cut it because I need a flat surface. Folds up, fits in most taxis. Oh, ow! And I normally plonk this on top of the ironing board and just unzip it, and everything's kind of already plugged in and laid out like this. This is a Namba soft case, and every time I think it's about to fall apart, like this zip's broken, all the handles have fallen off. Pretty wrecked. I've used this for probably a good 100 shows or more, and it's been on countless planes. It just keeps on going. Namba, good stuff. All right, onto the tech jargon. This is the Razer Blade 15 2021 Advanced model. I think I'm a Razer guy now. I freaking love this thing. It is so sleek, very compact, very powerful. Kind of like the Mac of PCs is what everybody seems to say. And of course, the laptop has to be plugged into power so that it runs at maximum performance. I've edited the power settings so that when it's plugged in, it never turns off the monitor or hard drives. I've got this sitting on a USB powered fan. It's very thin and light. Collapses very thin. Usually any venues are air conditioned, so it's not too much of a problem, but it just helps lift the laptop off the soft case and get heaps of air through. Even though the Razers have some aggressive cooling fans, this makes me feel better. All the audio is coming out of a Roland Duo Capture EX. It's very small, very simple, just 2 in, 2 out. All I need is one mic line in and a stereo out. It's USB bus powered, so I don't need to plug anything into a power outlet. This is the Shure Beta 58A. Sounds a little bit sweeter than the regular SM58 for my voice, I found. Tried to give it a little paint job, didn't turn out so great. Had this since 2009. It has been dropped, beaten around, as you can probably see. Still works perfectly. It's Shure. I've toyed with wireless mics. I just use a long XLR cable so that I don't need to find another power outlet for a wireless receiver, and I don't need to worry about batteries being charged. The Vortex Alesis wireless Keytar. It is built very cheaply. It's entirely plastic. Love this thing. This also has fallen off many guitar stands. I used to buy really cheap straps and they would fail and it's come crashing down to the ground many times. Still works beautifully. I wouldn't be mad if this did end up failing eventually because the version 2 is even better. It's got more faders, which I could use for looping. Yeah, this communicates via a USB dongle. Extremely low latency, some pads, some knobs, and some keys. And a little strip here, which I had to disable because if I accidentally touch it, it would start controlling things that I didn't want it to control. When I'm traveling extremely light, I ditch the Keytar and just use one of these Korg nanoKEYs. Plugged in with a very long USB extension and just route everything to this instead. Okay, video game controllers. I picked this up for crazy cheap. We're talking like, I think less than 10 bucks, possibly even around 5 bucks. So you don't need anything fancy. And this wireless Xbox controller for Windows, this communicates via dongle as well, USB dongle. And these work with extremely low latency, so they're perfect for playing percussive stuff. And I pass this round to the audience to control some stuff as well, and they have an absolute blast. Oh, that was loud. The Wiitar. I only use this for one song. It just adds a little bit of wow, and I think people tend to remember stupid things like this. Basically just assign some notes and some chords to this. Awesome fun. Whammy works, even this kind of stuff, the gyro. And it feels so cool to be, feel like I'm playing the guitar, but I'm really only just hitting, 5 buttons? I'll show you how to connect all of these to Ableton later in the video. The Stream Deck. I used to use an iPad for triggering locators in the Ableton timeline to switch songs, but that required either the venue Wi-Fi or an ad hoc Wi-Fi connection. God, the problems that used to give me, gone. And this is the original Stream Deck which operates exactly the same way as the new Stream Deck. I like this model much better because the base is detachable, and this just fits beautifully in my little case. The new model is very, very thick. It's a thick boy. I've just assigned keystrokes. You can clearly see what all the names of the songs are, and then when I trigger it, I get this handy little tick to show where I'm up to in the set. Basically, in the Stream Deck software, I select hotkey switches so that I can see when they've been used. First one is just the name. You just type in, so that's the song called Matzo Ball Soup. And then when it's been triggered, little tick comes up. And you can see it's just sending keystroke number 4. You go into Ableton, select keys, and you can see number 4 there. So if I hit, there we go, jumps to Matzo Ball Soup. Oh yeah, listen up. So when those locators are triggered, it will jump to that song in the timeline or the next section of the song if I'm doing kind of a ad-lib improvisation section. If I'm traveling light, I will assign each song to just a different key on the keyboard. Now this is why it's important that all of my backing tracks are tempo synchronized. That's all synchronized. The global quantization is set to 1 bar so that when I hit the locator, it's gonna trigger at the start of the next bar. So for example, ready to trigger the next part of the song? And you can see in my master timeline that all of the song tempos are automated for every single song along the timeline. Okay, the color strip. This is the Chauvet COLORStrip. I don't know if I'm saying that right. I think it's a French brand. This poor thing took a bit of a tumble in one flight. That last row of LEDs are dead. I think it adds another kind of layer of immersion. It's very small, just fits in a guitar backpack. I just carried it around in this and connects to the computer via a USB DMX cable. DMX is basically for lights what MIDI is to MIDI keyboards, and that lets me control this light via software without needing like a hardware dimmer. Get to that later in the video. This laptop only has 3 USB-A ports and 2 USB-C ports. So, because of all my little gadgets, I use a little USB hub here that plugs into the USB-C outlet, gives me 4 extra inputs. Now the really important stuff, strap for my sunnies so that I can do a bunch of that, it doesn't go anywhere. And beer, very important. All right, software. So on my desktop, I've got a folder that is really helpful for me. It numbers everything in the order in which I need to open them before a live set. So number 1 is loopMIDI. What it does, it creates a whole bunch of virtual MIDI ins and outs so that different pieces of music software can talk to each other, just like external MIDI cables would do. Got to load that first so that all the MIDI channels are available before any of the programs load. Inside loopMIDI, you can see that I've created all the virtual inputs that I need. It's literally a matter of naming it MIDI port. Bang, it exists now. And then I can use that as an exclusive MIDI channel for specific software. So for example, 2DMX, that's being sent to Freestyler, the lighting program. EXA, that's my virtual reality controller software. Fergo is the video game controller software, etc. WiitarThing, this thing's awesome. Basically, you can pair a Nintendo Wii controller to your computer using Bluetooth. It's actually very simple to do that. So you load up WiitarThing, connect, I select player 2 because I've already got this to player 1. You pair it by hitting both the 1 and the 2 buttons at the same time, and then OK, and bang, it's over here. Windows now sees this as just another Xbox 360 controller. I love this model because it goes like that, and you can just shove it in a backpack or whatever. PS, I always use rechargeable batteries. I think it's better for the environment. Certainly works out much cheaper in the long run, and most importantly for me, I don't have to run to the corner store to buy batteries before every show. Okay, that brings us next to Fergo joystickMIDI. This is another free program. Remember, all the links are in the description. So this one works really well. Took a bit of setting up because you need to assign every channel and MIDI output and everything like that. So I've assigned each different video game controller a different channel. Just makes things a lot less cluttered. And they're basically just sending MIDI keyboard notes. You save it as a preset, load it. Output device is Fergo, which is what I made in loopMIDI earlier. Activate, and now And you can see up in the corner that it is triggering. So it's important when you load up Fergo MIDI joystick that all of your controllers are discoverable first. So of course that means plugging in any controllers, making sure that these are active and paired. There we go, player one. And then you can load up Fergo joystick, otherwise it might give you an error. And now number 4, the brains of the whole operation is Ableton Live. I'm using 11 Suite. I load that up after all my inputs are ready to go, and that takes a long time to load because it's loading up every possible song that I might perform. And later on I'll show you how I do that without using up much CPU at all. It's just an initial load time that you got to deal with. So while that's loading, I load up some more programs. Freestyler, another free program. So this is basically just an array of RGB lights, red, blue, and green, red, green, and blue, and I can automate them in the Ableton timeline just like any other automation. I can also trigger chase sequences that are kind of preset built into the light. And another mode this has is sound detection. And you can adjust the sensitivity with a knob on the back. That's just a really lazy way to use some synchronized beats without having to draw any synchronized automation. Here you can see I've automated this to go on the beat. And then into a chase. So we set up Freestyler like this, go into setup, Freestyler setup, the interface setup with the USB DMX cable that I'm using is the Entech OpenDMX, and you can see it shows up here. We go to external control, MIDI control, and you can see to DMX, that is the virtual MIDI input that I created using loopMIDI. We start that and we should be able to see, play the timeline. There we go. You can see that that was going crazy, so that's working. Now this is where it gets complicated. I use a Max for Live plugin called ControlChange8. This lets me create 4 lanes of automation, and they represent the 4 DMX channels that this light receives. Channel 1 is mode, which is basically switching between manual color mixing of the RGB lights, one of the chase sequences like it's doing right now, or the sound sensitivity mode. Then the next 3 lanes are for each individual color in manual mode: red, green, blue. And as you can see, I can automate the timing and brightness of each color. So the ramp up is the velocity, is the brightness of each light. And you can see I've created some clips here for some commonly used chases and commonly used all red, all green, all blue, etc., so that I can just paste them along the timeline for any new songs. And if it's in chase mode like this, lane 1 selects which chase program, lane 2 controls the speed, lanes 3 and 4 are not doing anything. And this is where it gets a little bit more complicated. ControlChange8 is outputting these automations as 4 separate note control changes. Notes 14 to 17, and the MIDI control changes are 5 to 8, as you can see down here. The output, of course, is 2 DMX, which I set up in loopMIDI. Now, all of this, including the setup in Freestyler and this ControlChange8 device, you only ever need to set up once. Once you've got that talking to your light, you're good to go. Next up is Resolume Arena. I think this is version 7 I'm running now. This is running all of the synchronized videos that I have throughout my show, and outputs to a big projector screen or screen behind me represented here. In this video, I'm not going to go into why I don't use Ableton native video playing. I used to for a very long time, but it sucks. It is unreliable. No, I'm not going to get into that. That's going to be a separate video. Anyway, inside Resolume, we need to set the output, display 2, which is my second screen here. Once that's outputting to the projector, there's no way that the audience is going to see anything they're not supposed to see, because this goes on top of everything. So in Resolume, we go to Arena, Preferences, MIDI, and just get to Resolume is what I created in loopMIDI. I've set up a track within Ableton, which is to Resolume. And all this is doing is sending MIDI notes, just like a MIDI keyboard note. And that's being sent to Resolume with the loopMIDI MIDI input that I created earlier. Then inside Resolume, we go to Shortcuts, Edit MIDI, click on that, and that will be listening to learn whatever MIDI note you want to send to trigger the video. And to clarify, when I say synchronized videos, all of the videos, when I created them, were synchronized to the backing track. So all I'm doing is triggering the start point of each of these videos, or the start point in the next section of the video for the same song, if that makes sense. And then it's just a matter of getting the start times exactly right, if you want it to loop or if you want it to play straight through. Most of my videos, it's just play once, finish. I also send a stop key, which is linked here to the blank everything, just in between each song so that in case the video keeps playing or anything like that. And the last thing I trigger, which is important for me personally, is a Word document with the lyrics for one of the verses of my songs, because I can't remember them all. It hasn't stuck in my head. I wrote this song so many years ago and I performed it countless times. I just can't get the freaking order of the lyrics right for this section. So I have that up on the screen. I wear sunglasses so you can't see I'm reading the screen. All right, let's jump into the Ableton Live set. So you've probably already noticed that I use arrangement view, not clip view like a lot of live performers do. It's just my style. That's the beauty of Ableton Live. You can use it any which way you want. There's no right or wrong way. And the main reason I use this is so that I can automate everything along the timeline. And that's basically why I call it Glenn-proof. There's not much I can do to derail the set. All I need to do is trigger the song locations from my Stream Deck, play the instruments, drink beer, and sing. Even the loopers are automated. Check out this video to see how I do that. And all of the instruments and effects are only active when that song is playing. So all of the effects and instruments are only active when we're playing this part of the timeline. So you can see here, for example, I've put everything into a big instrument rack. It's off. Then when we're playing, when we've triggered that locator, everything turns on. And this drastically reduces CPU. We're only using exactly what we need to at any given time. But I can still preload everything up into Ableton, but only actually make them active when I'm playing the song. So the set still runs smoothly. I can bring this all the way down to 64 samples, virtually no latency, still runs beautifully. I can relax, have a few drinks. I don't need to worry about what instruments and effects are loaded. It's all happening automatically. So you can see I'm only using my own mic input for, I think it's 3 songs. The rest of the time I'll just use the venue's mic for them to mix and do whatever they want with. Because for these specific songs, I might have some toot effects. Just a little side note, something I only figured out very recently is that I don't use the arm buttons anymore. I set everything to in, so that if I do want to record the master output, it's not also recording thousands of lanes of MIDI and audio. I know, right? Duh. Obviously, that's how you do it. But for years, I armed everything instead. Oh well, now I know. I use Wave Tunes. It is a live pitch correction. I've got a very, very subtle preset happening here, just in case I'm a little bit off key. And then for one of the other songs, I've got a pretty aggressive auto tune. And as a rule, I pretty much always roll off the low end of any mic inputs just to prevent any rumbling. So you can see I've automated the send in this part of the section to go down to a delay. Shut up! So you can see that my arcade stick is active for most of the show, except for looks like 1, 2, 3 songs where I use it for other things. But basically throughout the whole show, I can trigger some Street Fighter sounds, just for a bit of ad-lib percussion. This is just a regular Ableton sampler with all of the samples mapped across those keys. But then in this song, it switches to a bell. Also on the main backing track, I've mapped one of these buttons to bit reduction and beat repeat, which adds some chaos. Here's something really cheeky I did. I automated a scale so that during one of the solos, because I can't really play very well, it will always hit the right notes. So a lot of my older songs were created using propeller head Reason, and this is going back to like version 2 or something like that. So I used to have to connect my Ableton set via Rewire to the old separate Reason application. But since Reason 12, Reason is now its own VSTI plugin. So it's one less application I have to load to start up the set. And I can still use all my very, very old presets. So here you can see one of my older songs is using some Reason drums. It's called Lizard's Clank. And I've automated some effects to come in. So and then once it gets to this part of the song, and then later in the song it gets really weird. And I play that pretty early in the set just to melt everybody's ears and get them used to what's about to happen. For this song, it's called Another Friday Night. It's entirely live looped, but I've automated all of the loopers Check out this video to see how I do that. For this song in Julie, I've added a little chord effect here, which literally is just adding 1 octave up and 1 octave down, just to beef it up a bit. For this song, Fertilizer, which is a true story about how my daughter was conceived, you can see I've just automated the pitch here, because once the outro starts, I want the whole keyboard to lower a few octaves. It's just one less button I have to push when I'm performing. When there's any instruments that are controlled via the video game controllers, I use a velocity effect, because these are not velocity sensitive. They're always sending 1 velocity. So this MIDI velocity plugin just makes sure that everything is being sent at 100%, which is 127 in MIDI speak. So in this song, it's called F you effing F. I pass this around and people can trigger samples of Arnold Schwarzenegger swearing his head off. I'm not gonna play them in this video in case this ever gets monetized. But I also used it in this song called Leave It Alone. It's about phone addiction. And I've used a scale device here so that it's taking every possible input and sending it to the same sample.
Rhythm of your life.
I've assigned this stick to pitch, so it adds a bit of a kind of a DJ scratch effect. And the left and the right triggers are panning left and right in case I want to kind of make it sound like it's coming from all over different sides of the room. One trick that I've started to do, which I think is improving the quality of my songs live, is rendering out the kick drums on their own. So that way, any live synths that I'm playing can be ducked by this compressor. That just adds a lot more oomph to the bass kick. For a song called I Want to Go Home, which is about 3 years into the lockdown in Hong Kong, really wanted to go home and see family and friends. I used the Keytar to gradually introduce the main elements of the song, like the bass kick and some bass keys and some synth. Oh, and there's the lyrics. But this awesome little Max for Live plugin, it's called SZK 8 Notes Converter, allows me to use the same controller, in this case the Keytar, to control different instruments playing different keys. Basically, you assign 8 notes and then assign which 8 notes you want it to spit out. I don't know why this isn't included in Ableton, just a simple note change. Unless I'm missing something, let me know in the comments. Ah, the hyper bottom. This is a Reason Subtractor Polyphonic Synthesizer preset that I have used for many years. It's called hyper bottom, and I just use it to fill in a lot of the bottom end if whatever instruments I'm using just don't cut it. Hyper bottom. Whew! So, I didn't cover hardly any of the actual VST plugins like, effects and synthesizers that I use. That's going to be in a future video. And like I said at the beginning of the video, this is my current setup. Over the last 13 years, I've stripped a lot down, updated a lot of stuff. I used to play a full digital drum kit with glowing sticks, which was super fun to lug up and down, walk up apartment, in and out of cars, in and out of venues. Fun to play though. I used to use MIDI pedals to control stuff as well, to control loops and locators. And I used to wear platform heels. God, that was dumb. I rolled my ankles very often. My laptop, I've gone through at least, this is probably my 4th performance laptop in 13 years. And I would say up until this one, it used to crash every other show. So it's kind of an element of suspense for the audience. Oh, is it gonna crash? When's it gonna crash? Is it this song? Oh, he made it through the whole set. I used to have this iPod with me in case the laptop was unrecoverable, and I would just play some of the basic backing tracks from this and jump around and sing that way. I even used to have a full band, twice. One in Melbourne, and I had a 3-piece in Daegu in South Korea. Oh, fun times. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, I always read the comments and get back to you. If you have any suggestions that, anything I could do differently or better, I'm sure there are a few. Please let me know. I love learning from you guys. Like I said, links to every single piece of software and hardware that I mentioned are down in the description. And do subscribe if you want to see more upcoming videos like this. I'm working on another performance rig video for my VR show. That is another beast completely. See you in the next one.